Hey everybody, welcome back to the Financial Freedom Show. My name is Rob Berger. Today is sort of a special edition of the live Q&A. We're focused on the software planning, the retirement planning tool, New Retirement, how to use it. The fun thing about it, at least I think it's fun, uh, is that trying to understand how to use the tool forces us. It really helps us understand a lot of the issues, financial issues that we confront, both saving for and then living through retirement. So that's what we're going to do today. If you're in the chat and can give me a thumbs up to make sure you guys can hear me. Oh, Dave's already got the thumbs up. Nice. So here's what I'm going to do. Here's the plan today. I'm going to talk about a couple of things very quickly about New Retirement. Then I'll answer the questions that I get in the chat. And then I've got a long list of questions that people have emailed me. Some of which will probably be covered by the time I get to those questions, but some haven't, maybe not. So I don't know how long we're going to go today. I have no idea. Maybe until I drop over. I'm not sure, but that's what we're going to do. So the thing I wanted to sort of mention to start with New Retirement, and let me put New Retirement on the screen. This is a demo. This is a demo version. I was playing around with it, so I've added some accounts. Let's see. We're up to almost $3 million. Sweet. I want to make sort of an observation. It was an aha moment for me with New Retirement and with really retirement planning software tools generally. And I guess I'll start by saying, unless you have a very, very, very simple, straightforward financial situation, let me just, no, I'll put my mug over there for the moment. You're going to encounter things that you can't model perfectly, whether you use New Retirement or some other tool. There's just too many variables. And so you got to kind of get comfortable with close enough, I think. And in the case of New Retirement, one of the things that took me a while to understand was the power of money flows, which is right here. And you can think of that really as just a way to control when money is taken out from certain accounts or transferred from one account to another. I'll give you an example. But money flows is an incredibly powerful part of New Retirement, and so is the insights. And I think they can be easy to overlook. And so I'll give you some specific examples. With New Retirement, we enter our, among other things, expenses, right? So we have either recurring expenses. You could either just throw it in as a lump sum. You could use the detailed budgeter and go through in great detail what you're spending. We have one-time expenses. You buy a car or something. Of course, we have medical expenses. And then there are other expenses that the system, that New Retirement adds for us. The primary one are taxes. And by taxes, I mean capital gains and ordinary income tax. It doesn't put in sales tax or property tax, but it does calculate for us our income tax, ordinary income and capital gains, and that gets added to our expenses each year. And that's important to understand. By the way, there's another example of that in this long-term care. Depending on what you select for long-term care, New Retirement may add some expenses in the last 3 years of your life. And you may say, okay, Rob, that's great, but I don't see that actually happening in the system. I don't see some big pop-up here that says, hey, we've just added all these expenses to your plan. And you don't see it because one doesn't exist as far as I know, but that gets us to insights. So if we go down to income and expenses, and we can look at the expenses each year. And you can see, I'll just click on 2024. We can see estimated income tax payments. Well, we didn't enter that expense, right? New Retirement did that for us. Same with capital gains. And if we come down to the last 3 years of life, you see that maroon color. I'll just click 2048. You will see long-term care got added in. It's only 109 grand. All right, walking around money. So we have to understand insights is critical. It helps us understand what's going on under the hood of New Retirement. But why did I use expenses as an example? Because we then have to ask, well, how does New Retirement decide how we're going to actually pay for those expenses? And it does it in a couple of ways. It first says, well, we're going to pull from income. I mean, if you're working, you got a job and you're making money, we'll use that to cover all of your expenses. Of course, you may have other sources of income, Social Security, depending on your age, of course. You may have some passive income, pensions, annuities. You may get an inheritance or other windfall. Hey, maybe you win the lottery. I don't know. The point is, it first takes money from your income to pay your expenses. And that's true if you're still working or if you're retired, right? And then it goes to your taxable accounts. It says, okay, now we're going to drain all of your taxable accounts. They call them here after-tax accounts. Checking account, brokerage account, savings. We're going to drain all those. And then we're going to go to your traditional retirement accounts, IRAs, 401ks, drain all of those. And then we're going to go to Roth. That's the order that they do it in. And you may say, okay, got it. But what if I have more than one account in each of those buckets? Like, for example, here, there are two after-tax accounts, a brokerage account and a checking account. We could add a savings account. Maybe you have 4 different brokerage accounts. How does it pick? Well, it drains, it uses the account with the lowest rate of return, which, of course, you and I set, right? We set it when we create the accounts, and we can look at this checking account, for an example. I've set it to a optimistic and pessimistic rate of return of 0%. I'm not going to earn any interest on it. And so it's going to take money from this checking account first, then the brokerage account, then it's going to move to traditional IRAs, which is this one up here, if you can see it, and then Roth. So I kind of go through that because I think one of the things in using this tool is to figure out how you can change the default behavior that I just described. So you may say, well, you know, I don't want money. Let's just actually add an account real quick. Let's say we've got a savings account. We've got 50,000 in it. It's ordinary income. We'll leave optimistic at 5, pessimistic at 2. There it is. We've added it. And you say, this is really for emergencies. I don't want new retirement to drain this account, which right now it would, right? It would do the checking account first. It's got 0%. Again, this is after it's used up all of our income, right? So this might not happen this year. We might have enough income. I have to look at what I put in this particular plan. It might not drain these accounts for 20 years, but eventually when your income isn't enough, it's going to start taking money out of this checking account. It's going to drain it. Then it's going to drain the savings account because it's at 2% and go from there. So one way to affect this sort of default behavior is to go to an account and say, you know what, I want to exclude this from withdrawals. I'm going to click yes. I don't want you to take new retirement. You can't have access to this. I want this separate. Now, why might you do that? Well, again, in this case, it's a savings account. It's for emergencies, you know. So you may want to always have 50,000. If you ever have an emergency, you're going to top off the account with some more money. So you can exclude it from withdrawals. New retirement won't touch it. Now, by the way, again, how do we look under the hood at what new retirement is doing? Well, we come down to insights. One thing that's interesting is you say, okay, Rob, let's see how it's withdrawing all this money. You may think, all right, we'll go to insights withdrawals. And this is not very satisfying. And it turns out that if you want to see where your money's being taken out of, you don't actually go to withdrawals. I know, a little confusing, at least to me. And I'm always never sure. I think it's savings. Yeah. The savings tab or insight is really powerful. Here we go, withdrawals. So we can see in 2023, there's one transfer. I must have put in a transfer. In 2024, we've got the transfer. I did set some transfers up. There's some money from a brokerage and then the shortfall from a default account, which I think is just checking. And then in 25, it's coming from another transfer and a brokerage account. By the way, if we fast forward, eventually we're going to see different things like RMDs kick in. You see right here. But this is where you can see where these withdrawals are coming from. Now, if I go back to accounts, another way to affect that default behavior is to say, monkey around with the rates of return. Remember, if it starts at the lowest and works up, let's imagine let's add another brokerage account. Let's say we had brokerage account, I think I misspelled it, number 2. I don't know, I'll throw in 40,000 or 400,000. Tax treatments, capital gains, cost Cost, I'm going to ignore all that. I can't ignore it. Okay, I'll put $4 cost basis. So now we've got two brokerage accounts. Now at the moment, this one says a rate of return of 2%, and this says 5. So let's say I wanted to drain this 400,000 first, which would happen, right? Because it's at 2% and this is 5, but 2% is wrong. I think it's going to be 5%. What can I do? Well, you could come in here. How do we get 5%? By the way, the assumption is we're using average. Oh no, we're pessimistic. Let me go to average. Go back. So what's that make? 7%. Nope. Yeah, 7%. I hope I'm not moving through this too quickly. I hope this isn't actually making things worse for everybody. The brokerage account's at 7%. This one's now at 3.5, but we want to use this one first, but it's a 7%. We think it's going to be 7%. Again, assuming average. Well, we can come in here. We can do 9, right? And 5. That's going to get us on, if we average it, 7%. But why not just make this 4.95? Let's just see what that does. Yeah, it gives us a rate of return of 6.98. So it's actually going to drain this account first before it gets to this one. So it'll be checking first at 0%. Savings account will be next at 3. Oh no, savings account excluded. So that's out. Then it'll be the 400 grand at 698 and the 100 grand at 7%. So that's one way to affect the default behavior, right? Another thing to consider is that you don't need to set up your accounts in new retirement on a one-to-one basis. So what I mean by that is, this is what I do for mine. You may have one brokerage account and you may have stocks in it, ETFs, mutual funds, maybe some fixed income. That doesn't have to get represented in new retirement as one account. You could split it up into multiple accounts. Why? Well, one, for the tax treatment. You might want your fixed incomes taxed as ordinary income and your stocks taxed as capital gains. And you have to pick one or the other in new retirement. So you break those two out. So you might have stocks in one, fixed income in another. You might even break out equities even further, because you may have an investment, and this is true for us with Apple stock. I don't know that I'll ever sell it. I don't know, I don't know. But I don't want new retirement selling it because the cost basis is so low, it's going to trigger a lot of taxes. Well, that's okay. I can create an account in new retirement that just holds my Apple stock if I want. Put the amount in, the cost basis. I can exclude it from withdrawals if I don't plan on selling it for right now. So you can do things like that to really affect taxes, where money is being taken from. And then with money flows, I'll go back to the screen here. Let's see. This is where you can say, okay, I understand you take out of taxable accounts first, then traditional, then Roth. But next year, because of my tax situation, I really want to take money out of traditional. Because I'll be in lower brackets. I want to take advantage of those lower brackets. And there's a lot of different ways to take advantage of lower brackets. But the way I want to do it is spend some of my traditional IRAs or 401ks, and again, I'm assuming we're 59 and a half or older. Even though I've got taxable monies, brokerage account, I just want to spend, I want to spend, let's say 50,000 of it out of traditional. You just come in and create transfer. We come in here, add a transfer from, let's see, I think it's retirement savings. I'm going to put it in my checking account because I'm going to spend it. I want 50,000 one time at age, let's say I'll do it January of next year. You could put a note here if you want, and save it. And that's what it's going to show that transfer. And where do we see that in Insights? Well, for starters, you should see it in taxes, right? Because that will be taxed. Now, the way taxes work, the tax for that will be calculated. It's a 2024 transfer, so it's going to be calculated in 2024, but it'll actually get paid in new retirement in 2025. We can see the sources. Yeah. So if I hover over 2024, we come over here, we can see this transfer right here. It's purple, 50 grand. There it is. Now, this is gross taxable income by source. So I see it right there. So insights are really important. Okay. That was my spiel. Is anyone still watching? Are you out there? So now I'll get to your questions, the more important. I think when you start to think about new retirement in that way, at least for me, it starts to answer a lot of my questions. Not all of them. Someone today is going to ask me about Roth conversions, guarantee it, and someone's going to ask me about dividends, guaranteed. And those are fun. So this is a good question from Dave. In using new retirement, what changes, if any, have you made in your retirement planning? And given the features of new retirement, what do you think people will change in the retirement plan when using new retirement? So I have personally not made any changes, but I'm probably not the normal use case. All right, I've been giving retirement planning a lot of thought for a long time, and I've used a dozen different tools, many of which before I even knew about new retirement. So I can't say that I have changed a lot of things. I will say that I will use the tool when it comes to Roth conversions, and I'm sure we'll talk about that, to model my plan. I actually don't get a lot out of let me put it back up on the screen. I personally don't get a lot out of these Roth conversion Explorer, which I'm sure someone's going to ask me about. I mean, this is interesting to look at, but I actually find it better to create a new scenario. You can add a scenario, and then go through and manually put Roth conversions in based on tax brackets. So I can walk through that, and I will use this tool for that purpose. But I already know that the earliest I'll do that is 2025. So what I mean by that is, in terms of tax bracket, I go to taxes. This is insights, right? So let me close up what I'm not using here. So this is insights taxes, and you can go to net taxable income by federal tax bracket. Now, I put a bunch of stuff in this plan. The plan probably doesn't even make any sense anymore. But I think it's pretty common between when you retire and when you start collecting Social Security and particularly RMDs, you'll see this valley here, this gap of some number of years. So I plan on filling that up with conversions. And I'll use this tool to model how to do that. And you can do conversions either. There's two ways you can actually input a Roth conversion, I think. Money flows, they have a Roth conversion, right? Now, if we put in a Roth conversion, let's just put one in real quick. I know, Dave, this is a bit outside. Let me hide the comment, a bit outside your question, but someone's going to ask it, so we might as well look at it. So the source account is going to be, it has to be, it's a traditional, right? And I've only got one traditional account, which I called retirement savings. Just throw in an amount for whatever, and we'll do it January. And these rates are important. I would just keep them with what I have in whatever funds I'm converting, but I'll just put 9 and 5, and you can save it, and you've got a conversion. And let's see. I know we'll see this in taxes. By the way, what you're seeing over here, this is insights. This is the same thing we look at down here. It's just obviously, oh, here we go. It's nice to have it here as you're making these changes. So that's just see federal. Yeah, so it doesn't actually have it. If you come down, what I was looking for, is this gross taxable income by source. You see the Roth conversion, right? I don't think it shows up here. When I go to taxes, I think you have to go down to insights. Yeah, in any event, or I may be missing it. I don't see it here. But another way you can do is just a transfer, right? You just input a transfer. The difference, you say, well, what difference does it make? If you do a transfer, you pick what account it's going to, right? Obviously, you'd pick a Roth account, right? If you're going to do a Roth conversion. That's if you set it up as a transfer. If you set it up as a Roth conversion, it should have entered Did I was able to do that? Let me just make sure. I thought it created a separate Roth conversion account, but I'm not seeing it. I wonder if it shows up after the conversion actually happens. That may be. Let me go back to this conversion for a second. Yeah, because you notice it doesn't have me pick the Roth account. I wonder what happens if I make this in December. I'm pretty sure it creates a Roth conversion account, but I don't see it here. But I'm pretty sure it does. Anyway, so there you go. I know I went off the rails there. So what will people change, Dave? I mean, certainly it helps you model your expenses and the chance of success. So I think it could absolutely change how people think about their spending, when they're going to spend. Are they going to spend a lot in early retirement and less later on? They can model that. Certainly it's going to help them model Roth conversions. Could help them pick when to claim Social Security, or at a minimum, see the different effects of different claiming strategies. So, it's really going to depend, whether you annuitize. I mean, it really just depends on each person's circumstance, how any retirement planning software will affect them. Obviously, if you're still working, the big question is when you're going to retire, to the extent that you have control over that. Rob wants to know my current asset allocation of my portfolio. I'm actually in fact, that'll probably be my next video. So that's coming. I got to tell you, if you saw the last one, it ain't going to look much different. Okay. So BC wants to know, how would you model an expected inherited home in, say, 10 years? So that's a great question. So let me preface this answer with a disclaimer. There are often more than one way to model something in any software. New Retirement's no exception. And so I'll give you my ideas, but there could be a better way, and I could just be missing something. That's very likely. Okay, one way to do it. So the thing about inheriting property, I'm assuming you're going to get stepped up basis, meaning if you inherit a $500,000 property, the tax basis becomes $500,000. And so, and there's no taxes that get triggered. Normally when money comes into your life, you earn it, whether it's from a job or an investment. There's some tax implications. But and there obviously can be some pretty significant estate tax considerations. But I'm going to just assume you're getting I'm assuming you're not inheriting a $100 million property, and whatever it is, and there are no taxes. It's not triggering any taxes. Now, depending on what you do with it, of course, you hold it for whatever some period of time and sell it later. There could be, right? So one things you can do, and see, I don't think modeling that, you can model a future real estate purchase, right? It's right here. Are you planning to purchase real estate in the future? Well, the problem is, I don't think you can have purchase price, but then it wants to know what account you're purchasing it from, right? And you're not purchasing it from an account. So one way I think might work is as a windfall, which is how as you can see, that's normally how you model inheritance. So you could say, which account? Now you have to put it into an account. So I'm trying to think what I might do. I might come in here. I'm just thinking about this as we go. So this is just off the top. I might come in here and say, I want an account. It's going to be an investment account. I'm going to say future inherited, I just misspelled inherited, property. There we go. And the current balance I'll just put as $1. I'll put it as capital gains. Cost basis I'll just put as I think you have to put something. I'll put $1. And I'm going to exclude this from withdrawals, right? So let's save that. And then if I go back to income, future inherited property. Tell us more about the windfall. So this is then I'll put real estate. And you can put the amount you think the future amount it's going to be. So we'll put 500,000. And when you're going to get it, let's say you said 10 years, so we'll put it out in 34, save it. We could actually go back to that account, by the way. What happens when you actually inherit it? I suppose you could model buying real estate from that account that we've created with the money coming in, maybe. You could maybe model it actually as a business is another option. Or I suppose, and again, if anyone at New Retirement's watching this, they're probably cringing. They're like, Rob, there's an easy way to do this. You could just leave it as an account. You've excluded it from withdrawals. You could put in an optimistic and pessimistic rate of return. You could put the cost basis in. I'd probably wait until it happens. You'll know the value then for sure. Account turnover should be 0. So this might work. That might be a way to do it. By the way, if we go to Insights and we go to Savings, savings balances, we see this future inherited property right here. It's like a teal color, and it's only got $1 right here, right? And then it jumps to 504,320 right here, and then it continues to go up based on the assumptions we set for rates of return. So that might work, maybe. So, Susan, is there a way to turn a Roth optimization suggestion into a new scenario? The short answer is no. There's not at the moment. I think they're working on it. And so just so we're all on the same page, if you go down here, let me go back. Let me close everything up. So you've got my plan. That's all your data, right? You've got coaching suggestions that you can look at. You've got the insights that we've been talking about. And then this Explorer, and you can run different things. One's Roth Conversion Explorer. So you could go in here and say, there's different ways to do it, but we'll say we want to do a Roth conversion up to a certain tax bracket. We'll pick the 22% tax bracket. We only want to pay taxes out of taxable accounts. We don't want to set a minimum amount to maintain in the after-tax accounts. And you get this plan. And here are all the options, or all of the conversions that they're showing you, they're suggesting. There's no button to hit that actually takes all of those conversions and puts them into the plan. You can see a table of them here. I don't know, is there a way? Can one thing I've never actually thought about is, can this be exported? That would be nice if it could. Because there's a lot of data, but I suppose you could maybe cut and paste it if you had to, if you wanted to see this data. But there's no way to actually press a button and have this put into your plan. One thing I'll mention before I leave this, I'm guessing we'll come back to it before the show's over. This forecast, this is the average pessimistic and optimistic thing. It impacts Roth conversion results tremendously. We're on average right now. Let's go to optimistic. Big difference. Let's go to pessimistic. Big difference. That's something to keep in mind, and it's something that I often forget, where I'm trying to model something for a video or in a live show like this, and I'm looking at the results and I'm thinking they don't make sense to me. And then I realize, oh, I've got it on pessimistic. Yeah. I tend to keep it on average. All righty. I do believe that, as I said, they're working on the ability to incorporate it. I have mixed feelings about that. I think this optimization tool is useful for ideas, but there's so many, are you going to make charitable contributions out of your IRAs as part, once your RMDs kick in? Will your filing status change at all? If someone dies, you get married, you get divorced, it's going to totally throw out all your careful planning, right? Unless you plan for that, of course. This whole thing about average, optimistic, and pessimistic. I mean, the more the stock market goes up and the better your traditional accounts do, the bigger the RMDs are when you finally hit that age. And of course, if the market doesn't do well, they're lower. And so there's so many assumptions that it's a best guess. There is no magic tool out there that will just tell you the answer, because there is no answer. I think these tools are helpful. Other tools are helpful, but you have to sort of think through it on your own at the end of the day and say, okay, what makes sense? What's my best guess? How bad will things be if I turn out to be wrong? You might call that sensitivity analysis, I suppose. Well, that's too fancy for me, but in any event. All right. So this is a good question. Comparing projection lab and new retirement, I think it's a great idea, and I'll add it to my list of future videos. I don't think it's practical to do it today, but that's actually a really good idea. I think a lot of projection lab. I think it's a good tool, and I've met its founder as well. So this is an interesting question, Mike, about whether new retirement could work with Mike Piper. He, let me show you Open Social Security. I highly recommend it. It's a free tool to give you an idea of when you should claim Social Security. Here it is. I don't know if it makes sense to try to incorporate it, Mike, only because my thinking on that is this is a very simple tool to use. If you haven't tried it, I highly recommend it. But once you have the results, it's very easy to plug them into new retirement, right? So I don't know if it's how necessary it would be to try to integrate it. But anyway. So Johnny wants to know how good new retirement is in factoring various state taxes, especially with changes. It's good. It's not perfect. To my knowledge, it doesn't factor in any planned changes for state taxes. For federal, it does, right? You can, for federal, where were we? We can go to my plan, assumptions, taxes, and select, do we stick with the current rates, or do we assume that we're going to roll back to the 2017 rates in 2026? Which this is, I always keep it here because I can't imagine we're not going to go back. And if we do, it's just a positive, at least in terms of financial planning, money in the bank, I suppose. But at the state level, I'm not aware of them they certainly incorporate state income tax. And so where you live, is important, and you come into real estate, primary residence, where you live. So, but I don't know that they do that for state laws, and I'm pretty confident, 99% sure, they don't factor in local taxes at all. And that can be an issue. I don't know if there's retirement planning software out there that does, but I don't think new retirement factors like county taxes or city taxes. I don't think. This is an off question from Dave. I have read Four Pillars of Investing. It's been a long, long time. Didn't he update it? Or am I thinking of a different book? I think it was updated. Maybe not. But yes, I've read it, but it's been a long time. So, I recommend it. I remember thinking highly of it when I read it. All right. Yeah, so Ed mentions it's frustrating he cannot link his Fidelity account. Well, I don't know about Vanguard, why that would be an issue. Fidelity's changed how they do this. And so depending on what services a piece of software or an app uses, they're still figuring out how to link Fidelity. I will tell you, I don't link my accounts. I just don't, it doesn't give you any sort of information on asset. Like, Empower gives you a lot of data about your investments. New retirement doesn't. It's not really its purpose, although that might change in the future. But the thing is, if it's so easy, you can just update your balances. Boom, 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 boom. Like once a quarter, maybe even once a year, I update them. It takes 5 minutes and you're done. But yeah, I hear you. And I don't think there's anything that can be done about it until, I think it's Plaid they use, makes the update so they can link Fidelity. I have not had, in the past, I've not had trouble linking Vanguard accounts. So I don't know what the issue is there. I'm just getting to the thumbs up. All right. Okay, here we go. From Mark, please model a Roth conversion with my taxes paid out of savings. So we touched on this a bit, but we didn't actually sort of walk through it. So it's fairly easy to do. Let me hide the comment. I guess I'll hide me as well for the moment because I'm covering up the screen. So as I mentioned, there's sort of two ways to model a Roth conversion. It's in money flows. And I'm going to delete this. Delete this. And we'll just start over. So model a Roth conversion. So you select which account you're going to be converting from. I've only got one traditional set up in this one. And the amount. I should say one thing. When we looked at the Explorer down here, Roth Conversion Explorer, there was an option to either pay taxes, convert more to pay the taxes out of the converted dollars, or only pay taxes out of taxable accounts. You notice here they don't have that, and it's because it's kind of built in. And what I mean is this: they're going to pay the taxes based on that same order I walked through before, right? So taxes, in this case, on a $50,000 conversion, is just more expenses for the year, right? Along with all your other taxes and all your other expenses, and they're going to take them out of income. Then they're going to take them out of your taxable dollars. Then they're going to take them out of traditional. Then they're going to take them out of Roth. So that's how that would work. And so if we put this in January of 24, we'll do 9% and 5 for optimistic and pessimistic. And we put that here. We see withdrawals per year. You see the purple is that conversion. It's set as one time, 50 grand. And we can look at taxes. We're doing a lot in 2024. I got transfers in here. I got all kinds of things. Maybe I should delete a bunch of stuff. So it's bringing it down some. I also have earned income in here, but then I also have that conversion I just put in. So let's try to do a little planning here. Let's put it in 26 instead of 24. It looks a little better, right? And you see your that's state tax, net taxable income by federal tax bracket. So you see what bracket you're in. And then you can, again, go back to insights. And if you look at savings, so actually, before we do that, so we modeled this, just confirm, it's a 2026 conversion, right? Why do I care about that? I want to go to savings. And I want to come down here to withdrawals, and I want to go to 2026. This tells me where my money is coming from, right? And it's saying I've got a Roth conversion, retirement savings, and I'm pulling, in terms of expenses, I'm pulling $40,970 from brokerage account number 2. Now, I have more expenses than that, but in this plan in 2026, I have income, right? In this plan, I've got Social Security of $48,000, savings drawdown of $90,000, investment income of $1,880. So in any event, the taxes would come out of, given this plan, taxable accounts. You might actually see it, expenses. Let's see here. I did this in 2026. It's just showing it as just regular income tax. So in any event, that's how that's going to work. You don't actually, in a Roth conversion here, you don't specify an account to pay the taxes from. That'll just happen based on the what they often refer to as order of operations in new retirement. So hopefully that helps. Yeah. Okay. One thing about a show like this that's hard is because it's online and I have the chat here, but I almost wish you guys were all across the table so we could make eye contact and I could, okay, is this making sense? Am I missing anything? Is it working for you? I don't get any of that. That's okay. So yeah, so this person's noting that new retirement doesn't present results in present dollars. They're actually working on that. That's apparently, I think that's going to change in 2024. But if you look at, when we're looking at things like this plan wellness, these are future dollars. These are not present. They're not adjusted for inflation. And I know that's an issue for a lot of folks. Yeah, it is what it is right now. But I'm told that's going to change. Paul wants to know if new retirement can estimate quarterly tax payments. Not that I know of, no. If it can, I'm not aware of it. Okay. Yeah, Vinyl points out, I guess this was in my comment, that it doesn't take out for property tax, right? But of course, you'd put it in as part of your expenses, right? And there's two ways to do that. I mean, you can, if you go to expenses, it could just be part of your, whatever your monthly expenses are that you've calculated, and they can include property tax, right? You can also do a detailed budgeter, which is this. And let's add, it probably offers a subcategory, yeah, property taxes. So you could actually, the benefit of drilling down like this and creating all these subcategories for your budgeting. Well, one would be maybe it helps you not miss anything, right? But the other thing that you can do is you can distinguish between must spend and like to spend, right? So you might say, okay, for travel, I must spend $500 because we go to family events and we drive there, and I really view that as something I'm not that I have to do from an obligation perspective, although that may be exactly what you're thinking. But yeah, it's really, really, really important. $500 a year or 1,000, whatever your number is. But you'd like to spend $5,000. That's what you'd like to spend because you want to travel to, or 10 grand or whatever your number is, because you want to do some more extensive traveling. So you can do that for any subcategory, right? And then we're going to go back here. We're going to go back to basic, but we'll keep it at detailed. When you're using detailed with your assumptions, didn't want that. Yeah, you'll see you get these choices. I can use the basic budgeter. That's just when you put a lump sum in. I can use a detailed budgeter, the must spend amount. So that's like bare bones, right? Or I can use like to spend. And so you can test these things. Like one thing to do would be select pessimistic in terms of returns and inflation, and then must spend. Because if things are really, really bad in the market and inflation, you're going to tighten your belt and only go do with what you have to spend. And okay, if I do that, how am I looking? If it's average, then I'm probably going to be like to spend. Certainly if it's optimistic, it's like to spend. And that can be useful. way to kind of look at your expenses in any event. Okay. I confess I don't follow this question. Why can't I retire with 0 scenarios and do model Roth conversions? I don't follow that. If you can maybe add a little more to that question. So Claudia wants to know how you can enter city tax just as an expense, right? So you could, again, whether you use the detailed budgeter or the basic budgeter, if it's just as basic, it would be part of your monthly expense number. And keep in mind, you don't have to, even if you use the basic budgeter, you don't have to put them all in one line item. You can create other expenses. So maybe you have, I don't know, you could have a taxes category if you wanted to add it in property tax and other things, or some other way to break up your expenses. The other thing you can do is say, all right, I'm going to spend 60. I'm going to just throw in some numbers: $6,500 a month from in this case 68. That's just because of the age I put in of the individual. But for the first 10 years of retirement, and then I'm going to put in a different number. I could call this, so we go back for a second. We can call this the go-go years, which is what they sometimes call it, retirement circles. And then we're going to have the slow go years, and we'll do, I don't know, 5,500. And it's going to go from that same, whatever the last one was. I think it was 78 and 5 months, but whatever, until we're, I don't know, till we're 85. And then you could do another one for the no-go years. And so being able to add multiple expenses, and there's different ways to use that feature, right? And what I just showed you would be one way. Another way, again, would be you don't want just one lump sum. You'd like to break it up a little bit just for your own understanding. Yeah. Hopefully that's helpful. Wade asks if I'm using the paid version. Yes, I am. TVK wants to know if there's a fee. There's a free version, and then the version I'm using is paid. I think it's $120 a year. Looking for more questions. Let's see. Is it time to update my profile picture? I don't know. What's my profile picture look like? I have no idea. Roddy wants to know, does new retirement understand taxes are set to increase in 2026? Yes. And I'll just show it again. But if you go to assumptions, taxes, you can decide, do you want to use the current tax rates throughout all the way, till you're dead? Or do you want to change to the 2017 tax rates, in 2026? And if you look at estimated taxes, as we toggle between these two, you can see there's slight changes. It's interesting. In looking at these changes, I almost wonder if it's changing the tax rates right away in 2023. That's interesting because it shouldn't do that. But it looks like it is. I mean, so it affects 2 years and a month. But in any event, yeah, that's where you can select which one you want to use. So Vinyl, if you new retirement use your income, what if the income is less than your expenses? Does it add if your income, you mean if your income is more than expenses? I think that's what you mean, right? Because if your income is less than expenses, it just goes to your accounts like we've talked about. If it's more, you can decide. You can either save it and tell it which account you want to save it to, any excess income, or it'll just get washed out of the system like you spent it. And I think I remember where to set that. Let's see here. I could be wrong though. Where do you set that? I would have thought assumptions, but maybe it's not. It's been so long since I said it. It's not rates, no, it's not this. Maybe it's accounts. That doesn't seem right. Money flows. Excess income. There it is. It's in money flows, excess income. Assume I'll save it all. Model me saving a percentage of it. I wonder when that feature came in. I don't remember that. Maybe it's always been there. So you could say, well, I don't want to save it all. I'll spend some of it, but I'll save whatever, 50%. And I want it to go, the excess to go into. This is important, by the way, because wherever, and this is true whether you're saving just 1% or you're saving all of it. But I've got different assumed rates of return, right? For checking account, I've got 0. For brokerage account, the average is 7. So it's going to make a big, big difference. Right now, save 100% to cash. So let's instead save it to the brokerage account. Now, I want to see look up here when I hit save. That gave me a cool 900 grand more when I die at 94. It makes a big difference where you put it. Again, assuming your rates of returns assumptions are different from, say, for a checking account versus a brokerage account. But in any event, to answer the question, money flows, excess income. That's where you put it. Okie dokie. Tom says this is helpful. Can you record it and put it in the YouTube channel? It's being recorded even as I speak, and you yell at me because I got something wrong. No, Rob, it's over there. Don't you see it? Yeah, it's recorded. Oops. Here we go. Jamie says, why is new retirement assuming a mortgage payment after it has been paid off at retirement? It's modeled in there, but continues to be a monthly expense. So the short answer is I don't know. I would reach out to them. There's obviously something going on in the plan that's not obvious. But I don't know how to help you just without actually seeing your plan. So let's talk about dividends. Vinyl mentioned my Apple stock. It generates qualified dividends. Yes, it does. Not very many, by the way, not much. It's very low dividend yield. I think the way in which new retirement handles dividends is its biggest weakness. And I know they're working on that. And I'm hoping and expecting some changes in 2024. So let me go to accounts. Now, first of all, that doesn't matter with retirement accounts, right? Because retirement accounts, dividends aren't taxed differently, right? Every dollar that comes out of a traditional retirement account's ordinary income. Doesn't matter if it was a dollar that you earned via dividend, right? Qualified dividend, doesn't matter. Where it matters is brokerage accounts. And new retirement doesn't have a feature to sort of say, okay, these are the dividends that are coming out. They're going to be taxed. Every dividend dollar is taxed as a qualified, let's assume, qualified dividend. It doesn't work that way. So if we go into this brokerage account, so we can only select capital gains or ordinary income, right? That's the first limiting factor, right? Because you may have a taxable account that has both. That's where I would price if it's significant enough. If it's not significant enough, if you just have a little bit of cash in the account, but most of it's going to be subject to capital gains, it's stocks or whatever, I probably wouldn't worry about it. But if you have a lot of fixed income or different tax treatments between cap gains and ordinary income, you might split it in new retirement into two accounts. But we're going to assume stocks. The only way kind of built in, sort of, to deal with dividends is with this account turnover rate right here. This is very similar to the turnover rate that we sometimes look at for ETFs and mutual funds. This basically says what percentage, in this case of $1 million, are you buying and selling every year? So for example, you might rebalance once a year and maybe it triggers some taxes and it amounts to 2% of your portfolio, 20 grand. Okay. Now, remember, we're going to see a change up here when I hit save. So look up here, top right corner, because this is going to trigger taxes. It's only 2% turnover rate, but you'll see. Wait a minute. There it goes. Look at that. Cost us 639 grand. I mean, it's just 2% in one little account. Oh, but this is 2% that's getting churned over every year and triggering taxes, right? But here you might say, okay, that's for if I, rebalance or I change investments. I sell an investment and use the money to buy something else. That's turnover rate. What about dividends? Well, you'll notice there's nowhere here to put in dividends. So you could, in theory, use the turnover rate as sort of a placeholder for dividends. You could say, I have a dividend yield, let's just say of 2%, so I'll put 2% here. Now, I've got cost basis of 0. That's probably unrealistic for most of you. So let's assume for a moment our cost basis on this $1 million account is 500 grand. The problem with using turnover rate to model dividends is that, as we know, every dollar in dividends is taxable income, right? What the taxes will be depends on other factors, but it's going to, assuming it's qualified, it's going to be long-term capital gains. But with a turnover rate, that's not how it's calculating it. It's looking at turnover rate as if you sold, in this case, 2% or 20 grand of, I had to think for a minute. Is that right? Is that 2%? Yeah, of $1 million, which is not all taxable income because you've got a cost basis in our hypothetical of 500,000. So only half of that, $10,000, is going to be considered taxable. And you can see we jumped up a lot as a result. So simply using the turnover rate, while it gets us a little closer to our tax situation, if we have dividends coming out of our taxable accounts, it's not perfect. Now, are there ways around it? One thought I had, and I haven't, this may not work. This may be a bad idea. If this really matters to you, if you say, well, I get the turnover rate you just showed me, Rob, but given there's some cost basis involved, it's not going to be a perfect thing, and that's a big deal for me. I wondered if you could do the following. I haven't run this by new retirement. Let's say instead of this, we're going to do, so we got a 50% cost basis, right? 500 grand is 50% of $1 million. I'm just going to make some numbers up. We're going to reduce this account to 800,000. We want to keep that same 50% ratio. So we're going to do 400,000 cost basis. And we're going to assume a 0%, zero turnover rate. We're not going to sell any of this. We'll eventually withdraw money, but we're not going to have a yearly turnover. All right. Now you say, okay, Rob, that's fine, but where'd our other 200 grand go? Well, we're going to create a new account. Taxable, manual, and I'll call it my dividend account. 200,000, there it is. Now here, it's going to be capital gains, right? And we want the cost basis to be 0. And that's to model this idea of getting paid dividends. This is particularly, I think, this approach, which I just thought about like earlier this morning. So I haven't really thought through it completely, but could be useful if you're in retirement and you're spending your dividends, right? Because what you could do, you could say, okay, we're going to have the same optimistic and pessimistic. We're going to exclude this from withdrawal strategies. We don't want new retirement touching this account. And then we go over to money flows and we can create a transfer for the dividend. So we could say from my dividend account, we're going to move it to my checking account. Let's think about that for a minute. When I do that, it's going to trigger taxes, right? But we want it to trigger taxes because this is going to model the dividends I'm receiving every year. And it's going to, we've set my dividend account to be taxed as capital gains. So that's exactly what it's going to do. And that's what we want. And we're going to put it in checking account because we're spending it. We're retired. And what else do we have to do but spend our dividends? Now, we'll put in, I don't know, we'll just say it's 20 grand a month because that was our thinking, right? 2% of $1 million, whatever. We could do this annually and we'll start it in January of 24. Now, here's where this is not perfect. One issue is we've split that $1 million account into two, right? 800 and 200. And the 200, the dividends hopefully go up over time. But there's no way to inflate this transfer. It's going to be $20,000 a year for however long I put in here. I can't add an inflation adjustment. So one approach would be to say, I don't care. And I'm just going to put it all the way down here until I'm dead. Another way, and then what you could do potentially is create additional transfers. So one way to do this is to do one every 5 years. So we'll just leave it to 75. So that's 7 years. And this will represent my dividend payments out of that brokerage account that I'm going to spend and save it. And then you'd have to think, okay, well, what about transfers out after that? And is the 200,000 the right number? Is that enough to show my dividends, until I'm dead? Do I need more than that? Do I have to make adjustments? Well, you can see the complications. So it's by no means a perfect strategy, but if this is something that matters to you, it might be something worth considering. And feel free at the bottom of the chat, which I haven't even come close to seeing yet, to put in there why I'm wrong and it doesn't make any sense. Dividends are a problem with new retirement. They need to fix it. And I'm told they will this year or 2024. In my case, I use turnover rate. That's what I use, and it's not perfect. And that's okay for me. But I do hope they fix it. Okay. This is a fair question from Jeff. How about showing us some of the basics? I did sort of jump into the deep end of the pool, didn't I? All right. So really, in terms of just getting your data in, you can, when you literally sign up the first time, they'll walk you through a bunch of screens. But with your assets, you're simply inputting each account. I mentioned breaking accounts, like particularly taxable accounts, into more than one. But I think when you're just getting started, I would probably just do a one-to-one match. You're going to come down here to add an account. I've already obviously got accounts in this here, but you're going to add an account. You've got your traditional IRA, current and former 401ks, any Roth accounts, an HSA 529, any other pre-tax. I don't know what that would be, but I guess there are some. And then all taxable accounts come here. With traditional, this person is not married. Let's add a spouse. I'll just, whatever, doesn't matter. I go back to accounts, add an account, traditional IRA. You'll see you get an option because you got to know for retirement accounts who owns this. So it's my spouse, manual entry. And here you want to put in, I like to put in things that help me understand what it is. And so I might put like Jan's Fidelity traditional IRA or whatever. And then you simply put the balance. For optimistic and pessimistic, I first think about what's in the account. Is it a lot of stocks, stock funds, fixed income? It's a mix, and I'll put in rates of return accordingly. What I tend to do is put in as optimistic the sort of long run average for that stock bond allocation. Maybe even a tad less. So if we go to, you can use Portfolio Visualizer. Vanguard has a good source right here where it shows you the historical returns from 26 to 21. So if you were like a 60-40, it's 9.9 is the average. So for me, I would come in here and I'd probably just put 9. It's a little conservative. This is the optimistic. So you could make the argument I should just put in 9.9 or 10, whatever. Pessimistic, I usually put at 5 for me. So that gives me an average of 7. And that works for me. But again, if I had a traditional IRA that had nothing but fixed income, I would lower the rate of return. And then you can exclude it from withdrawal strategies. We've talked a little bit about that. And you just go through all of your accounts. And that's what you do. Fairly straightforward, I think. Home and real estate, you're going to have your primary residence and whether you own or not. You can own with a mortgage. You can actually model a reverse mortgage and you can rent. That will rent $2,000 a month. The zip code is important, right? Because this one happens to be in Virginia. Let's see. That's Ohio. Go Buckeyes. So state Ohio income taxes it changes the taxes. If I save this, we're going to see a change. There it goes. 3 million. What? What's going on, Ohio? It's outrageous. There's something else going on there. But so, you put in where you live. You can model, if you're going to change your, residence, you can model, and you can do this either as part of your base plan, or you can create a scenario to do this. But you might say, hey, I'm going to move. Oops. I went through that too fast. Let me back up. Future, will you or have you considered downsizing? Yes. And I've got no change. So I'm going to purchase a home, relocate, and continue renting. That's right, because I'm renting in this scenario. Let's relocate. I'm going to relocate at age 70. Estimated rent, I think this is in future dollars. No, today's dollars. Today's dollars. We'll keep it at $2,000. And I'm going to move to Tennessee because they don't have state income tax. Yeah, look, I made $170, $170,000. So you can model future changes. You can model if you own other real estate. Maybe you're going to buy a home in the future. You can model that. You're going to sell a home. So you can model all of that. Of course, debt's pretty straightforward, not including a mortgage. A mortgage, if we go back here and we change this to own with a mortgage, it's going to ask you your mortgage details. One thing I'll point out here is that you only put in principal and interest. You don't put in insurance and taxes. Those go in just to regular expenses. But for other debts, pretty straightforward. And you could just put in total debt. You could break it out. You can connect some if there's ability to connect a student loan or car loan. That's a possibility. But again, I think it's fairly straightforward. Income, you're going to have your jobs, and you can put in your monthly pre-tax income. When you're going to stop working, you can put in optimistic and pessimistic growth rates, for raises and so forth. You can also add a contribution if you're contributing to a workplace-related, let's say a 401k, for example, or HSA, and are there employer matches or not. but it really kind of walks you through it. It's fairly straightforward. I'm not going to add those to this plan. Social Security, the way they start with this is your benefit at your full retirement age. And you can get that from the Social Security Administration. You can put in what age you plan to claim your Social Security. Let me go back here. You can also, maybe we'll look at Social Security Explorer separately. But you do that for you and your spouse. Now, one thing about cost of living adjustments for Social Security, you can enter it here. You can also enter it down here under assumptions, right here. The thing that I would point out, when I first used New Retirement for Social Security, I put the higher number as optimistic because that's more money, right? And that seems like a good thing. And the lower number is pessimistic. But I later concluded that's the wrong way to do it, because you want the pessimistic COLA to be pretty much the same as your pessimistic general inflation rate. Now, technically, Social Security uses CPI W, right? As opposed to CPI-U. Long term, they're pretty much the same. But if there's going to be any difference between these two, maybe you put this in at 375 or something. But what you don't want to do, this is what it looked like for me originally. Well, this doesn't make any sense, because there's no way general inflation is going to be 4% and the Social Security is only going to go up by 2. That just doesn't happen. So I flip it around. I've confirmed with New Retirement that makes sense. Anyway, where were we? You can obviously enter pensions, annuities, and windfalls. It's all fairly straightforward. Pension, is it lump sum or monthly? Are you currently receiving it or not? If you're not, it's going to ask you, you give it a name, the amount, when you're going to start receiving it. COLAs. I would do COLAs for this. Well, depends on the terms of your pension, but if they're using some general rate of inflation as their COLA, I'd probably do the same thing here. You can even do a survivor benefit if there is one. Is it taxable or not? Fed only? No, yes. So I think fairly straightforward. Expenses, we've talked a lot about them. We didn't talk much about Medicare. You've got a lot of different choices on Medicare. And I will be honest with you, since I'm not near the age for Medicare, I've not spent a lot of time figuring out what I'm going to choose. I've still got 7-8 years. I know, hard to believe. But a lot of details you can put in here for Medicare. What else? I don't do much with estate planning or profiles and goals. Here are the assumptions, how long you're going to live, how long your spouse is going to live. We've talked about rates of inflation. You can also set a separate rate of inflation for housing and medical. So, yeah, hopefully that helps. I know I kind of run through it very quickly. PH says, when modeling a Roth conversion to 12% bracket with 1.2 million in account, I don't see much reason to do one. What am I missing? Using 3.7% withdrawal, drawdown with or without still low taxes barring. I don't know how to answer that in the abstract. I gather you mean that when you run these different scenarios, it doesn't change much in your overall plan. But without having more details, I don't know. I don't think I could offer any sort of explanation. Jeff says, my employer has a defined benefit of 10% of my base pay that goes into a 401. So it's an employer contribution of 10% of your pay. It goes into a 401k. I think there's a way to set that up. So if we go back to accounts, you'd pick whatever account that is. We'll assume it's let's see. I need a, let's create a new account. That'll be the easiest way. Current 401k. I'll just put in 401k, balance, whatever. Now, if we save this, now you notice when we ran through that very quickly, maybe I went through it too quickly. Actually, I'm going to slow down for a second. Let's do that all over again. 401k for me. I'm going to enter it manually. Account name, 401k balance 25,000. Optimistic rate of return of 9, pessimistic of 5. You'll notice I can model a rate change in the future if I want. I can exclude the account from the withdrawal strategies that New Retirement runs through. But there's nowhere for me to actually say, hey, my employer contributes money to this. And that's a little confusing. But if you save it, and then you go back to it and edit it, look at this. Contributions, employer match, and payroll. Are you making contributions to this account that aren't shown here? Yeah, just getting 10%. Let me actually take the comment down so you guys can see it. You can add contributions and money flows. Oh, okay. Money flows. Recurring contributions. Do you have any recurring contributions to savings you'd like to model? Yes. It's income linked. Now, let's see here. Contributions includes employer match. How do you contribute to this account? So I don't know if you contribute anything. You didn't mention that. But we'll say a specific dollar. You would put here whatever you contribute. Let's assume it's 0. It can't be 0. We'll put $1. Does your employer match your contribution? See, this is interesting. This may be a problem. Oh, no, maybe it's not. Just the way it was worded. So here, 10%, I don't know what you make, but let's just say you get $5,000 a month. That can't be right. We'll say it's $500 a month. Well, it could be right, but we'll just say $500 a month. So it shows your contribution of $1, and I'm just put $1 in to assume you're not contributing anything. It wouldn't accept 0, so put $1. Obviously, if you're contributing, you'd put whatever that amount is. Your employer's giving you $500 a month, and there you go. Where does your portion of the contribution go? The reason they're asking this is because you could be contributing to a Roth and the employer's matching could be going to traditional, but we won't get into all of that. You pick your pre-tax account. And there you go. I think that should cover you. So Doug says, when modeling Roth conversions, I find that I spend more in taxes and have less in assets at the end. Well, that makes sense, right? Because you wouldn't have any, I'll call them embedded tax liabilities, which you would if you held onto your traditional retirement accounts until you died. And let's just say your children inherited them, they would have to pay the taxes out of that traditional account. With Roth conversions, you get to end of life. Yeah, your balance is lower because you've pulled all those taxes out. And your kids inherit a Roth and they don't have any taxes for those. So that's also why in the Roth Conversion Explorer, which is this right down here, highest estate value I really find to be not useful at all because it doesn't factor in all those tax considerations. And maybe as a practical matter, it'd be pretty hard for it to do so. TVK, I did add a football. Right there it is. And I turned it so that it says Buckeyes. That was a gift, a Christmas gift from a very close family member. All right. Oh, here we go. Brad explains. This goes back 30 minutes. Roth conversions creates an account that you see in the savings insight. Okay, but not in your list of accounts. So just so we're all clear on that, I've got a Roth conversion here. It doesn't create an account here, but if we go to insights and savings, yes. When was that? Was that 26? Yeah, Roth conversions, green. Thank you for the clarification, Brad. That's part of learning any retirement planning tool is just all of these sort of, okay, where does it go? It's over here. How does this change everything? What? Jamie says Buckeyes boo. That is uncalled for. That's hurtful. All right. Are we going to beat Mizzou? Does anyone even care at this point? I don't know. I guess I do, but okay. By the way, if you want me to answer a question, tag me. How long has it been? It's 3:20. Tag me in your comment. I'm now at comments that you guys left at 2:22. So an hour ago. I'm an hour behind the actual live comments. If this is useful to people, I'm happy to do this, I don't know, once a month or something like that. Because I'm clearly not going to, I haven't even gotten to the questions that were emailed to me. I am skipping general like investment questions because I'm trying to focus on sort of this retirement planning aspect. But you guys are asking some good questions. That's more for the Monday Night Live show. This is an Americano. Someone was asking about my coffee. It's an Americano. Very fancy. I do drink tea though from time to time. All right. I'm not quite sure what this is in reference to, but I agree with Peter. You need to live at your house as your primary home for the inherited house to get the 250 tax break, but you still get stepped up basis, right? Like I handled my stepmother's estate. She died a little over a decade ago. I didn't inherit her house, but I don't remember what happened to her house. I mean, we sold it. I don't remember how it went, but whoever got it, it was stepped up basis. They never lived there. We, as part of handling her estate, we sold the house. So Katie says, we have loans made to family members, can't figure out how to enter them in new retirement. Given the amortization details, decrease in interest earned and increase in principal. Yeah, I could see that would be a challenge. How might we do that? I don't know. You might. Well, you could model. I mean, here's what I'm thinking. You could model the interest income as passive income, which I think gets taxed as ordinary income, which is what you'd want. Now, in your case, the problem is your interest income, assuming it's an amortizing debt. Yeah, your interest income is going to go down over time, not up. You could So we could set this at 0, but that still doesn't set it sets the growth of this stream of income as flat, but you want it to go down. So it depends on how much it's going down. You could set this passive income. You could create entries for this every couple of years, maybe, to kind of get a rough idea of that income. It wouldn't be perfect, but might be close enough. And then when you get your money back, that's going to be tax-free, right? You're getting the return. Well, it's amortizing every year. So that's the other thing, is you're amortizing every year. So you're getting some principal back every year. And that principal, you're not going to pay tax on that. That's a really interesting question. I have to think about that one. I don't have an easy answer to that, because that's coming in. You could model that as a windfall, which doesn't get taxed. But what a pain that would be. Because you have to put in an amount for every single year. I guess it depends. If you're having to put this in for 3 or 4 years, maybe not a big deal. But yeah, that's a question for New Retirement. I'll reach out to them and see what I can get on that. There's a lot of good discussion amongst all of you in the chat, and I'm happy to see that. JP, I enjoyed meeting you very briefly at the Boglehead conference. Well, I confess the initials JP and a face don't come together for me, but I'm sure I enjoyed meeting you as well. I did start to take pictures of people so I could remember folks and names, but. So Michael wants to know my view on this whole reporting in future dollars, difficult to interpret. I don't. They do have it on their radar to show future dollars and current dollars. I don't know exact timing. But I'm sort of looking at the plan from, is it going to be what are the odds of success kind of a metric? And so that's good enough for me. I mean, seeing things in current dollars, I think will be very helpful, but it's not something that I've lost a lot of sleep over, if I'm being honest. But I know it's a big issue for a lot of people, and I get it. All right, scrolling through. Rob, I think you emailed me, right? I think I had your question written down. Let me just make sure. Pretty sure I do. Yeah. So Rob had emailed me, but he's also got the question here. And I think the way you could do this, let me just show you something I did first before we get to it. Let me just pull this up in a different way. I created my own chat GPT. You can create your own GPTs. It's not hard. And you can upload, like, for example, PDFs of information that ChatGPT will consider in responding to your question. So what I did, I uploaded the New Retirement User's Manual. I updated some articles I found where folks at New Retirement were describing how to model things. I've even uploaded some information from New Retirement's Facebook group page that I found useful. Now we can just query ChatGPT. How do we model a 529 plan in New Retirement? Watch, it'll probably just be gobbledygook. Takes a second. We'll come back to it. So there is an account for 529. So if we go to accounts and scroll to the bottom, add an account, 529. And you've got to put who it belongs to, manual. And so we'll say 529 for child number 1. You might actually use your own child's name, but I'll just do child number 1. The balance is whatever. You put in your optimistic and pessimistic rate of return. These, as a 529, if you look over here, if you select yes, this account will not be used for the following, blah, blah, blah. But if you then look here, it says 529 withdrawals are never automatically deducted. They must be specifically set up to be withdrawn from. Okay. Now, so I've just created the 529. Let's see where it put it. It's right here. So it is in a tax advantaged account. So you don't get a federal tax deduction. You may get state income tax deduction depending on where you live. And then if you go to money flows, you can, I think, I've not personally done this, but I'm sure you can add a regular contribution. It's not income linked. And it's going to go to the 529 account. And you're contributing $200 a month from whenever to whenever, from today till this pickings of times, right? And then the question is, well, that's fine, but how do we get money out to pay for child number one's education? And that would be just a transfer, right? You could do a transfer. I'm pretty sure you do a transfer. Let's go back to ChatGPT. Yeah, it walks through input current value, estimated growth, contributions. Yeah, it doesn't actually talk about specifically how to get the money out, but it's got to be a transfer. It's the only way that makes sense to me. And I think here it would just go to your, say, so in new retirement, I think you would just put it to your checking account. Well, I have to think about that now. Because then you would also have to add an expense to expense that out of the system, which you could do. I'm just wondering if there's an easier way to do that. Ah, there is. I went to New Retirement Help, and good old Nancy has the answer. The way you can do it is not with the transfer. Go to expenses, go to disbursements. 529 accounts or HSAs. So we'll just say you're going to disperse $20,000. I'm kidding myself if I think that's what a college education costs for a year. We'll just say one time, from which account, 529, at what age, when you're going to do it, notes, there you go. And obviously you could set up as many 529 accounts as you wanted. I think that answers that question. Well, it definitely answers it. I think it answers it correctly. Whew. Thanks, James. Appreciate it. Rob can't see our eyes glazing over. No, but 329 of you are still watching. Although you could have fallen over and it passed out. And so it just looks like a bunch of people are watching. I really doubt, this is from Paul, I really doubt there are plans to make new retirement for Canadians, but I could be wrong. I don't know. It's a good question. Vinyl, I sure can see you solving each other's problems without me, and I am thrilled because I'm tired already, and it's only 3:33. I do not have a discount code to purchase new retirement. I'm sorry. Wish I did for you, but I don't. Susan wants to know what percentage of success I get if I choose pessimistic. Well, that's a good question. I'm going to log into my own. I'll have to log out, I guess. I'm going to log into my own new retirement account. Set it to pessimistic, and then we can all cry together. So right now, with it's set to average 99%. If I go to pessimistic, under 15%. That's not very good. Now let me look at my assumptions, which it's been a while. 42 accounts. Yep, part of the reason. One thing to think about is your pessimistic rate of return and your pessimistic rate of inflation. So if your inflation, your pessimistic inflation is equal to or higher than your pessimistic return, it sinks your plan quick, because inflation costs are going up more than you're getting from your investments. Now you may say, yeah, Rob, and that's just the way it is, and I'm pessimistic. I'm really pessimistic, but that could sink a plan quickly. So like, I'm just curious, if I change my pessimistic rate of inflation from 4 to, I'm just going to put it to 3%. Yeah, so I went from 4% assumption for pessimistic inflation to 3%. My plan went from under 15% to 84%. So yeah, those assumptions, the results are very sensitive to those assumptions. And let's just assume 3.5. 84 goes to 48. It's a big difference. So you want to play with those assumptions and the assumptions for your rate of return. It's not just these assumptions in isolations, it's in relation to each other. Rates of return and inflation. Okay. Let me see if I'm now still signed in to the demo plan. I am not, so let me sign back in. Okay. So Michael wants to know how to model ACA premiums when doing Roth conversions. So yeah, I don't think you can't do that. At least you can't do that in new retirement, at least not in the sense of their Roth conversion explorer. Like they have, I'll show you this. They have the ability to model based on IRMA brackets for Medicare, but they don't have it for the Affordable Care Act. And so I think you sort of have to do it by hand. You have to know, what the numbers are for getting credits, and then keep an eye on your taxable income. So I think if I were facing that issue, unless it was abundantly clear to me, I'd probably wait till towards the end of the year for the Roth conversion and take it year by year. Just depending on your other income. Part of that depends on how stable your income is. Do you get bonuses where it goes up and down, or investment income? But I think you have to look at that on a year by year basis. I don't know of an automated way to do it. Yeah. But maybe someone in the chat does. How does new retirement model from spending from an HSA? It's the same way that models spending from 529 plan. So we go to expenses, it's disbursements. If we add a new one, you'll see, whoops. Here we go. Use this section to model one-time or recurring disbursements from your account. You will have the option. Where did it show? It actually had, let me delete this. Delete. It had a place to, I had a better explanation. That's interesting that it goes away. Oh, well, it was over here too. Disbursements, add a disbursement, which was how new retirement says to do it. But that's how you do it. At one point, there was an actual reference to HSAs and 529s, but I guess after you create a disbursement, it assumes you already know that. And so it takes that message away. Kind of interesting. But yeah, a disbursement amount, you'll pick the account. So if you had an HSA here, you pick that. Yeah. Oh, wait. Was I not showing you my screen? Disbursements. That's how you do it. I'll just leave my screen up. All right. Oh, back to my profile pic. Clean shaven with glasses. Yeah, I had that picture taken obviously some time ago. And there was a lot of photoshopping going on. Let me just tell you that right now. Can you model Roth conversions so that the traditional IRA account is completely converted at age 86? Well, it's an interesting question. I'm not sure what the thinking behind that is, but yeah, I mean, you could just continue to do conversions. I presume up to a certain tax bracket each year. You would literally go to money flows, go to Roth conversions. Let me see. Yeah, you can't, you'd have to kind of switch screens to see your balances for each account, but you could just keep adding another Roth conversion from your retirement savings. Click, you'd have to come up with an amount. Again, I would do it based on, generally speaking, tax brackets. It's, the tax system is more complicated than just the bracket. So you could trigger other taxes. So you want to factor in things like IRMA and ACA credits and tax on Social Security and other things. But you could just do 1 year after another and then maybe go back and change the amounts a little bit to see what the tax implications are. But yeah, you could just model it out. You could just take your balance, and your balance is going up with market returns each year. So it's not a fixed point, but more or less take your balance divided by the number of years you have between now and 86, at least as a rough idea. And you could have everything converted by age 86. I think my question would be, why do you want to do that? What's special about 86? Because you could be incurring some taxes you might not want. You might not want to incur. Okay. Some of these questions I see I've answered. I think, so Robert wants to know, do I see new retirement as a tool that people use routinely to track progress, or more a one-time plan development tool? I think it's going to depend on the person. Some people could use it for a year and say, okay, I've got this. I'm okay. I don't need to use it every year. I think other people just like the comfort of updating the tool and seeing the results. And they also, it might be a way to show your significant other, hey, here's what's going on with our finances. Here's the plan. So I don't know that there's a right or wrong answer to that. I got a question emailed to me that kind of was similar. See if I can find it real quick. I've gotten so many. I can't find it. But basically, it was asking me who new retirement is for. And it was a similar question, Robert, to yours. I think the person emailing me was in their 80s and said, look, I've sort of made all my decisions. My Roth conversions are behind me. I've done that. Obviously, taking Social Security, made my Medicare choice. I don't have any sort of big questions to figure out. And I'd take no issue with that at all. they thought that maybe the tool would be best for people maybe within 5 years out through the first 5 or 10 years of retirement. And that sounds right to me as well. Yeah. My chair isn't terribly uncomfortable. It's just I've been sitting in it for almost 2 hours. Let me just quickly run through some of the questions that were emailed to me. All right, here's one that's a good one that I think can be confusing. You'll notice, so we're in money flows. Let's just see this. If you look up here, this plan completeness right here, and it's got income score, average income after December 2023, average expenses, estate value. And that shows up in the My Plan section. It's there no matter which section I'm in. And the question was, this average income didn't seem to match the person who emailed me what they were actually spending. And if you hover over the little information, it says your estimated average retirement income is based on your earnings from work, passive income, Social Security, annuities, pensions, from your retirement age to longevity, plus an assumed savings drawdown of 4%. In today's dollars, meaning it is adjusted for inflation. That's how they calculate this average income. It's not based on your spending. It's average income, and they have to come up with they have to use an assumption to determine how much income you can get from your investments, right? What you get from Social Security, particularly once you're taking it, is known. Same thing with an annuity or a pension. But what can you get from your investments? They just assume the 4% rule for purposes of this number. And then this 217 score is just a ratio between this number and the expenses. So, for example, if we're in pessimistic, if we go to average or optimistic, these numbers don't change. This number does. Expenses change because taxes change, among other things. I personally don't spend a lot of time thinking about plan completeness. This data could be useful, but someone asked me about it, so I thought I'd mention it. All right, let's go back to the chat. I need someone to help me to read the chat and have all the questions that I should cover lined up for me. I'm not sure how to make that happen. Dave wants to know if I shared my portfolio recently. No, but it's the next video I'm going to do. I've had that request a lot. Michael, I think you're confusing two companies. New Retirement is not associated with Empower at all. And New Retirement is not a broker or a quasi-broker at all, at least as far as I know. Final says he has such a large loss carry forward that he'll never pay taxes, capital gains tax anyway. I'm sorry. I don't have a large loss carry forward. I have friends that do. Yeah, I thought about this. This is from Susan. It might be helpful to have a rep from New Retirement join on these Q&As. Yeah. They could be lurking. I don't know. All right. So Doug says dividends can be put in income, in passive income. You can, but they'll be taxed as ordinary income. They won't be taxed. I don't think they'll be taxed as capital gains. Let me just show you what we're talking about. Go to income here, passive, and you could put in dividends, whatever. and you can put in the pre-tax amount, right? So let's say it's $2,000 a month from whatever age to whatever age, and you can have growth. So this is, we talked about the fact that if you use different ways to do it, you might not be able to show growth like a transfer. You might not be able to show growth in dividends. You can show growth here, but then this is going to be taxed as ordinary income. In fact, if we save it and go to Insights, Taxes, yeah, it's probably not going to show us the bracket, but it is coming in. I'm pretty sure as ordinary income. I mean, it's showing passive here, but so that's separate from realized gains. The other thing to keep in mind is if you decided to do it this way anyway, you would want to reduce your assumed rates of return on your accounts, your taxable accounts, if that's where these dividends are coming from. You want to reduce them by your dividend yield, right? Because otherwise you'd be counting it twice. So keep that in mind. Let me see what else we've got in terms of the emailed questions. So I got one question on Roth conversion tool where it would, the Explorer tool that we looked at, where it would never show a conversion or suggest a conversion in the current year. And that is correct. It doesn't. And that's just, I guess, a limitation of the tool. They did have, so they had this article on Roth, on 2023 Roth conversion calculator. So if you Google that for new retirement, you'll find it. And of course, we're running out of time. What today's December 28th, the market. So maybe for some of you that want to rush to get a Roth conversion in now, there's a tool that allows you to sort of get an idea of what that conversion might be. I will tell you though, this tool is not connected to the planner at all. So this is sort of a standalone tool just for 2023, which, as I say, it's Thursday. So I guess you have till tomorrow. All right. So I may bring this to a close soon because I'm about to pass out. I know there are tons of questions I haven't gotten to, and I'm sorry. But like I said, I'll do this again. This is an interesting question from Robert. New retirement does not recognize a transfer from an IRA account prior to RMDs as income. It does recognize it as a taxable event. Is there a better way to do this? Well, I don't think it matters. And here's what I mean by that. So if we do a transfer, what transfer do we have? We'll delete that one. So if we do a transfer from, do we have an IRA in here? Here we go. Jan's traditional IRA. And we're going to put it in the checking account. I'm assuming we're going to spend it, right? And it's whatever, it's $25,000. And we'll do it January of 24. So that triggers taxes, right? And we want it to trigger taxes. And that'll trigger taxes in 24. It'll be treated as ordinary income and come down to taxes by source. And here's our transfer right here, purple, 25,000. Good. Now, does it matter to us that it's not income? Well, in a way, it kind of does, right? Because if new retirement were to view that as income, it would tax it differently. Well, I guess in the case of traditional, no. Although in theory, you could have other payroll taxes depending on what it was. But all we really care about is that money is now going to be available to new retirement to help cover our expenses. At least I think, assuming we're going to spend it. I don't know why else. If we were going to take it out and we didn't want to spend it, we wouldn't put it in our checking account. We'd put it in a different account, right? perhaps one where we've excluded withdrawals or that has a higher rate of return. And just because we know our plan, we know it's not going to be drawn from anytime soon. But if we want to spend it, putting it to the cash account works great. New retirement will still use any income we might have in 2024 to cover expenses. But then once it's exhausted that, it's going to go to the cash account, assuming that's your lowest return account, taxable account. And I think that's what we want. So I don't think that's a problem, at least that I can see. Who knows? Maybe I'm missing something. By the way, I'm working my way through Slow Horses. Great show. I don't know. That's totally random. But why my mind thought of that, I have no idea. Yeah, this is a similar question we had earlier. John says, how would new retirement handle things if I'm loaning money to someone else that is earning interest? And I just don't know. I mean, the problem is, I mean, you could model it in rough ways, right? You could model you could come over here to accounts. You could say, all right, I'm going to create a new account. It's taxable. And I'm going to say loan to friend. I gave them $20,000, or I lent them $20,000, ordinary income. And what's the interest rate you're charging? We'll say it's 7%. Now the problem, and we can exclude this from withdrawal strategies, right? Because you don't actually have this 20,000 at the moment. I mean, it would be an asset on your balance sheet, right? But sort of a note receivable or whatever. But it's not money in the bank for you. And it's earning this rate of return, but of course, there's no amortization built into this. So if it's amortizing, you're going to be earning 7% on a lower and lower balance. And that's what I don't know how to model in new retirement. Now, if it's interest only and they're going to pay you a balloon payment, in 5 years, then maybe this might just work out just fine. I don't have a better answer at the moment, but I'll see what I can find out. All right, modeling an inherited IRA in new retirement. Yeah, it's a pain, isn't it? So first, let's ask ChatGPT. How do you model an inherited IRA in new retirement? By the way, I can tell you the answer, and I'll show you. But you create an IRA. And then you exclude it from withdrawals, and you set up transfers based on whatever method you're using to drain the account, which now is 10 years? Depends. I have a small IRA, but I inherited it over a decade ago. So I have set it up in new retirement as transfers, but much, much smaller amounts that last pretty much forever. Yeah, it kind of gets the answer sort of right. I'm assuming this is not a spousal. If you inherit an IRA from your spouse, you can just incorporate that into your own IRA. But in any event, we would create an account, just a traditional, for me, I call it inherited IRA. We'll just say it's 100 grand. We'll leave everything else the same. We're going to exclude it from your withdrawal strategy. And then we're going to go over to money flows, transfers, add a transfer. It's going to come from the inherited IRA account. You'll decide here whether you're going to spend it or not. If you're going to invest it, let's say it goes to a brokerage account. And it's going to be annually, and you have to just guess at the amount. I mean, you'll know the amount. I mean, in my case, the broker calculates it for me. But if it's over 10 years, let's just assume, and I'll just put in 10,000 for the sake of discussion, and you'll start it next year and you'll go for 10 years. Again, all of this, you need to get the dates and the amounts correct. I'm just throwing in placeholders, really. Whoops. And you could have a note there if you want. And of course, this is going to trigger taxes each year. We know that, right? By the amount of the transfer. Now, so yeah, that's basically it. You just, again, you got to figure out the exact timing, the amounts. And there you go. All right. It is 4:00 and I am tired. I am thrilled that so many people joined. I hope that you found this useful. I am going to ask, I'm going to hopefully have timestamps up on this video in a day or two. That's going to take a little bit of work. And I'm happy to do this again if people find it useful, maybe once a month or something. Maybe talk to the folks at New Retirement. Maybe they want to join. I don't know. It's not a bad idea. So there you go. Well, hope you have a great week. Remember to tune into the Ohio State game and be rooting for the Buckeyes tomorrow, please. 8 p.m. Eastern time, I think. It should be fun. And until next time, remember, the best thing money can buy is financial